and welcome to the Geek Out Academy channel. We're so glad that you're here. Today we're going to dive into something that will help you increase your engagement inside of your membership area by up to 60%. It's something that we call the 6 experience models. Now, I want you to imagine for a second that you have a membership area that you're using for your continuity, and people are coming in, and instead of just being a place like a dumping ground for all of your content, it's actually a place where somebody can come in and experience your content and then do the thing that you want them to do. And we can take normal engagement, which is at usually 1% for most courses or programs online. We can get it up to 60% with you just understand these 6 models. So let's go ahead and dive in. Okay, membership experience framework. We're going to talk about the 6 experience models or membership models. I'll use those interchangeably in order to help you drive engagement. Now, super important, we did a big Should I Switch series, and we on Geek Out constantly dive into the membership experience. So if you are interested to getting this kind of content and you want more, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button now. All right, let's go ahead and jump in. So first I have to talk about a story. So the story goes something like this. Back in 2019, I started building membership sites. I had come from 18 years of doing user experience, research, and design in corporations, and largely in Silicon Valley. So it was a lot of SaaS products. And I was used to big products and big projects, right? So when I came into the ClickFunnels world and I started to build membership sites, they were the closest thing in terms of like people coming back to the same place again and again. And we had to deal with things like product adoption and how do we get people to do the thing and how do we drive behavioral change. So I loved it. It fit very well with my background. But in 2021, I came across somebody, his name is Dan Havey, and if you're on YouTube and you've probably found Dan is somebody who is a master coder at all things ClickFunnels, and he was able to make ClickFunnels bend to your will. And so my expertise and background in user experience and in product design, and his expertise in ClickFunnels code, and specifically the code around membership sites, it was a magical combination. And so him and I got to work, and we built about 30 membership sites for various clients. We used all of the 6 models we're going to talk about today. The clients were anywhere from $10 million clients to, 10 to 30K average monthly clients. And so it ran the gambit. Usually there were courses creators, coaches, SaaS owners, people who were providing some kind of deep expertise, and they wanted to convey that expertise and help people actually achieve a behavioral change. So we had a good run at it, and eventually we partnered up with Susan Leonardson, who a lot of her videos are going to be linked in her. She's my partner in crime on Geek Out, and her and I started to get to work. She has a sister named Joanne, who's an expert in database design, and so the 4 of us got together, and it just got super geeky, and we built so many membership sites, and they were souped up amazing. And we established an agency model of being able to provide membership services and membership sites. And usually they would range between 18,000 to 21,000, right? But the problem that we kept running into is that we would hit this brick wall where it would, because of what we built was so custom, it would be that they were dependent upon us. And a lot of times our customers wanted to be free agents and do, creative things with their membership areas, or they wanted to be able to be a little bit more in the know about like what was happening. And it also was just not sustainable in terms of that really high upfront cost and then helping them to be able to continue on. So we're like, okay, this won't work, but we're kind of at this brick wall. We're like, well, what do we do? It's not bad in terms of being able to get customers at that 18 to 21K once a month. That's not bad. We could do that. But there was something about it that just felt like we are on to something so good, and it shouldn't just stay with the 4 of us and any client who is able to give us that amount of income and be able to work with us. So, but we weren't really sure what to do because the way that we had gone about doing these custom builds is it did require a certain degree of skill set and technical know-how. So all of a sudden then, 2022, Funnel Hacking Live Russell introduces the linchpin. Now, all of a sudden, the linchpin, the number one thing you focus on that he talks about is continuity. And continuity usually means you need some kind of membership site. And so at that same time, our Geek Out movement was starting to blow up. And so the combination of those two things basically opened up the floodgates for, okay, how can we now, since there's going to be this huge demand for membership sites, and specifically being able to do membership sites in ClickFunnels so that they are not boring, they're not just out of the box, but they actually provide a really good experience similar to what you would see in any other of the traditional membership sites out there. We started to come up with, how do we actually make this accessible to everybody else? And so one of the very first things that we had to do is we had to be able to break down what we had learned and why we do what we do. Okay, so the very first thing is the linchpin. Now, this is the Geek Out version of the linchpin. It's a slight variation of Russell's, right? Where we do have the social happening, like what's happening in your traffic world in terms of Wild West and nurture, and then what's happening in your buyer space. But very specifically, what we're focused on is in the continuity. And so when people start thinking about continuity, they start saying, well, I have to have a membership site, right? Okay. The short answer is you don't necessarily have to have a membership site, but eventually you are going to need a membership site for your continuity. So let's go ahead and break that down. The years that we have been building membership sites, I have studied over 160 membership sites, just trying to understand what is the experience and how are people delivering them, how are they successful, how are people responding, and I wanted to understand, like, why do people build what they build? Is it just kind of like a regurgitation, or is there some intention behind it? And then with my product adoption hat on, like, what was really popular and how could people do it? And so after studying these 160 membership sites, I detected a pattern and I made 3 discoveries. So discovery number 1 is there's a lot of names that these things go by. So digital courses, knowledge bases, podcasts, academies, enterprises, portals, content libraries, archives, resource libraries, masterminds, learning journeys. There's all these different names for membership sites and continuity, right? But the one thing that they had in common is that what everybody else seems to be talking about when it comes to continuity is the business model. So what is the payment structure? What is the offer? How much am I going to charge? What's the payment? Like, how are people going to pay? Are we going to do a 30-day free trial? Are we going to do a $1 trial? Are we going to package it together, right? There's so many people talking about continuity. And the very first thing they talk about is the payment structure or the business model of it. Normally that has to also to do with like your content. So what content are we needing and how regularly are we delivering in that content? Again, all of that is the business model. So what is it going to be? Like, how do I structure the offer? The problem with the business model, while we all have to make sure we're doing it, the problem with the business model is that if I'm thinking about handing off a set of requirements to somebody who's going to build my membership area, or if you're going to build your membership area, the business model in no way, shape, or form helps you understand what to build. What it does is it basically says, this is how I need to run my business, this is how I need to market, this is how I need to talk about the offer, but it doesn't tell you what's actually in the membership build itself. Versus if I'm thinking about an experience model, which if those of you who are familiar with the experience genre and the experience world, most people would say that we're in the experience economy, meaning that the thing that people pay for is experience. It is the thing that people come back for, and I think that that is more true than ever before in our history. So when we think about creating experiences or the experience model with your continuity space, right? The things that we're consumed about are transformation and how do I hold my people accountable and how do I help them adopt the behavior and do the thing that I want them to do or adopt the product that I'm giving them, and how do we actually build a system that encourages those behaviors? These are the questions and these are the intentions behind thinking through an experience lens instead of a business lens. Okay, that was the first discovery. The second discovery that I had was that every single membership experience that I evaluated, I found that 3 parts were critical. Part number 1 is the main content area where people would go to consume the content. Part number 2 is community. We all, especially as adult learners, thrive in community situations, and community helps us learn, right? Now, communities could be things like Facebook groups, Circle, Mighty Networks, Discord. These are some of the popular ones that are out there, right? But the community part is the second critical component. The third critical component is what I call nurture path. So these are things that are like text messages, emails, DMs. It's the little tiny touch points that help drive the behavior back into the content and the community areas. All right. The third discovery that I found, and that is the most important for what we're talking about here today in this YouTube video, and that is the experience models. So here's what's so cool. After studying the 160 different experience models out there, and they were on all different platforms. They were on Teachable, they were on Thinkific, they were on Experienceify, they were on WordPress LearnDash, they were on ClickFunnels, they were on Kartra, they were on Kajabi. It didn't matter what the platform was. They were also across all different types of entrepreneurs. So male, female, coaches, course creators, SaaS owners, big, small, high price point, low price point. They were talking about an info product or a service they provided, or some product that they wanted people to adopt. It ran the entire range, right? But of all of that, there were clearly 6 experience models that emerged. And those 6 experience models are these. Now, before I get too deep into what these 6 experience models are, it's really important that you understand what is an experience model. Okay, I want you to think of experience models like architecture, and I'm going to break it down like this. Let's say that you came to me and you said, Andrea, I want you to build an obstacle course. Okay, well, the first thing that I would ask you is I would say, okay, talk to me about what that obstacle course, what the experience is, right? So we're going to have a starting line, and then a gun's going to fire, boom, and then they're going to start running. But I need to make sure that they're running on this one path because it's the most efficient as possible. Then they're going to get to the first obstacle. It's got to be really clear how they get over that obstacle as fast as possible. Then when they go on, I'm going to have another clear path, or maybe I have like 2 paths that they have to choose from, but the paths have to be clear. And then they go to the next obstacle, and then the next one. Then I might have like a giant timer up on the left-hand side that has like a countdown, or it like is timing me compared to my competitors. Maybe I have a leaderboard that's like, showing me how I'm doing relative to everyone else. And then maybe there's like music playing. It's like dun 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 dun, right? I'm injecting momentum, and there's a clear path, and there's one thing at a time, and it's super fun, and they're gonna go, and it's like celebration, woo! Okay. Now, if you came to me and said, I actually want you to build a library. Okay, what I would think about a library when I came into a library space would be, okay, a library. There's going to be anybody from the streets are going to come into the door with some random keyword or some discovery or something they want to find, or just like a random, like, I'm in the mood for this, right? And I have to be able to create an experience where they can come in, they can peruse, or they can find something with like a keyword that they have in their head. So I need to have probably some kind of categorization system. They need to be able to easily find things. I need to also maybe be presenting like similar items or similar objects so that they can, or similar artifacts, so that they can like do that whole discovery and like breadcrumb them against each other. There's going to be plenty of room for sitting and discovering. It's going to be quiet. There's going to be good lighting so people can read and consume. Okay, this is a very different experience than an obstacle course. So when we are thinking about the experience models and the 6 experience models, it is exactly like you would come to me and ask me to build an architecture that helps to support a particular type of experience. So, of the 6 experience models, what we also found is that they are best placed at certain areas of the value ladder. So this is a typical value ladder. It was popularized by Russell Brunson, and in his value stacking, he starts with lead funnels, unboxing funnels, then presentation funnels, which my partner in crime, Susan Leonardson, actually created a great YouTube video about presentation funnels and how you sell them. So I highly recommend that you go check out that video, and we're going to dive deep into the experience models that go with presentation funnels in the future. And then phone funnels, right? So what we found is that if we actually look at the experience models, there's key experience models that show up at every part of the value ladder. So we got together, we discovered this, and we're like, okay, let's clean up this graphic. So to put it in a more clean fashion, this is what it looks like. So we know that sprint models are typically found when I'm looking at lead funnels or unboxing funnels. Course models, for instance, are more typically found in unboxing and presentation, and then maybe like an augmentation to a phone funnel offer. A coaching model, though, however, you usually see those on presentation and phone funnel, and etc., right? So the models map to the value ladder. Super cool. So now you can ask yourself, where am I at with my business? What model best supports that? Okay, now that we know that there's 6 experience models and we know that they break down across the value ladder, let's start to dive into each one of these experience models and get to know them a little bit better. Okay, the first model is the sprint model. Now, sprint models are really good if you're trying to inject a lot of momentum into somebody coming into your world for the first time. They tend to have a lot of pressure. They tend to have a lot of momentum injection. They tend to usually focus on one thing at a time. The biggest part about all of it is that you want to get people a quick win. So you want to keep them very focused, you control the content, so you don't open up your content to everything, right? It's like usually today we're going to focus on this, tomorrow we're going to focus on this, today we're going to focus on this, right? So it's very much, I'm going to focus on one thing at a time, just like that obstacle course, and we're going to accomplish something that's very bite-sized. A lot of times the visual that I have in my mind when I'm thinking about sprint models is that it's like a really quick relay, or it's that baby that took its very first step. And that's essentially what your sprint model is doing for your customers. It's say, take this one step into my world, start to get a taste of the win, start to get a little bit of the feel of the behavior that I can teach you, right? And so it's just giving them that first momentum, that first win, and it's highly concentrated on a behavioral change to get into your world. It's usually a jump start. It's usually at the very beginning of continuity programs, because it's that first taste into your world. It's very concentrated. All right. The second type of model is the library model. Library models, usually you see them as injected into, like, they just did the sprint and now they kind of need to like go start to implement a little bit. So they might need just some reference, or maybe they did a sprint and they did a course and now they just need like a way to reference all of the material that you have. So good examples of library models would be Netflix is a library model, right? Funnelflix, if you're familiar with the ClickFunnels world, it's a library model. The intention of library models is that it's geared towards promoting exploration and discovery and research. And the reason why it's so good in terms of continuity and keeping people in your world is because it's usually highly based in the language of your world or the lexicon of your people, right? So in all of our worlds that we create and we bring our customers into, there's a shared vocabulary that we're going to start using. And in that shared vocabulary, when I come into a library model, I'm essentially trying to deepen my knowledge and deepen my understanding about that kind of bubbled of resources and know-how. So that is what library models are really good for. Okay, the next type of model is the course model. This is probably the most traditional model that we see. This is what people refer to. And unfortunately, a lot of times when I see them manifesting in like the marketing space, it's basically doing the same thing that was done to all of us in our education system. And it kind of turns into like info vomit, right? Here's a bunch of content and then good luck if you want to go do it. Now, there are other course models that are kind of a little bit more like small group, where I'm really just trying to teach you to go from A to B, but it's usually a little bit more self-paced, and you can take it upon yourself as the learner to go at your own pace and hold yourself accountable. There's lots of content usually. It's usually a bigger skill set than what you would see with a sprint model that people are trying to learn. It's very, the goal is very much about transformation to some degree of depth, right? So whereas the sprint model, it's like a first taste, a first win, a first behavioral change, the course model is deeper, where I'm going to learn something a little bit in more depth and be able to apply it a little bit more broadly to different situations, and that there is a clear path to mastery. So, and the goal of a course model really is to get you into a certain degree of mastery in my world. Okay, that's the course model. The next one is the mastermind model. Now, mastermind models are usually something that is, the virtual space is usually accompanied by something that's in the physical space. So in a mastermind model, the most important thing that you're usually selling and the most important ingredient is community. So usually it is an extension of these personal events that are very exclusive and that they're geared towards a group of peers that have some kind of similarity in terms of their mindset, their heart set, or just how they operate in the world or in their business. So the virtual space is usually an extension of these masterminds, and the community is probably the most important aspect of it. And then maybe some resource exchange or some way to virtually connect pretty seamlessly. Another model is the coaching program. Again, coaching programs usually contain some kind of person-to-person experience, and that the virtual space is usually an extension of the coaching relationship. Coaching programs, the intention is to create a space where it's highly personalized, so that whatever the personal growth plan is of the people that you're serving, they can keep themselves accountable. You can do check-ins with them. You can provide feedback. They can give their questions or seek feedback from you. And it usually tends to be about 6 to 12 month engagements. So again, the highly personalized aspect is really important when we're creating coaching model experiences. And then finally, the event model. This is probably the one that's like the most popular right now. It might also be referred to as challenges, but essentially at the end of the day, what it is, it's a concentrated time. It's huge momentum, even bigger than the sprint. And the intention is just to touch hearts and minds with the goal usually of trying to convert into a buying decision. The one exception to the buying decision would be TED Talks. TED Talks are definitely events. Like, I'm coming and I'm sitting and I'm getting entertained and I'm injecting into an idea. And it's a lot around entertainment value and trying to just stimulate your brain and your heart into a different way of thinking, right? But they don't necessarily care about a behavioral change at the end. The real end goal oftentimes of events is that I just want to get you into a particular offer or into a buying decision. So that's the event model. And we saw a huge rise of these during COVID. I mean, the most famous one is Tony and Dean. And Tony now has, the big screens that we see. And these are the type of experiences and events that we create. Another really popular one is if you are hosting a webinar, that essentially is an event model. And so we can see different aspects of that event model there. Okay, so that's a summary. There are 6 experience models. Now that you know what the 6 experience models are and a little bit about each one, what you need to do now in order to start to create an amazing continuity program is decide which model are you going to focus on first. Now, you might say, Andrea, I have a hybrid. I'm going to encourage you, don't do hybrids. When you start, just focus on one. Be really clear in the intention and deliver that. And then you can add on a second one that's available in your continuity space. But when I go into each one of those spaces, it's very clear in the intention is one of these 6 models. I would contend that if you experience something and it's a little off, or like you're feeling really overwhelmed, usually the reason that happens is because somebody has taken one of these models and tried to mush it with another one. And so it's like this kind of discombobulated, I'm not quite sure what to expect, right? And the customer isn't really clear in terms of this is what I'm trying to understand and do. So I would encourage you, take a look, determine which of the 6 models is yours, and then focus on that one first to deliver it first in your continuity program. Now, if this video was helpful, we're so glad and we're so happy to have you as a part of the Geek Out community. There's a couple other videos that are linked, specifically the ones from my colleague, Susan Leonardson, that talks about how do you sell if you're doing a course model. And we also have a playlist on the Should I Switch series. So as you're building your membership site, making that decision about which technology you're going to use, which ultimately allows you to deliver these experience models, is also linked below. So thank you so much for tuning in. Like and subscribe. I'll see you on the next one.